Haha, awesome.
Ah, here we are.
Hey, and we're
We're
live. All right. I'm going to be following this today to see how it works here.
okay, great.
Yay. Well, hello everyone. Whether you are joining us live or you are on the rebroadcast, this is our debut for Enhancing Your World podcast, a weekly podcast, and we're going to be talking about anything and everything, aren't we, Chris?
Yep.
This is amazing. So Chris, tell us today what we're going to talk about because this whole community idea was really yours. So let's share that with everyone.
Well, the concept that that what comes to mind when I think of unity is oneness, right? And what I'm seeing in so much of our media and social media, and all these uh, you know uh, teachings, is really feels like separation to me.
Mhm.
Um, you know, because to say, well, this person isn't high vibe, or they this or that, or they're that you put them in a box or whatever, that creates separation, which creates division. And for me, the whole reason that I wanted to get into the holistic arts and to do a lot of the things that we do is to realize that all teachings, all things are one. They might come from a different lineage, a different time, a different location, different whatever, but they're always leaving universal truths that help us find that oneness. And I've been a component of collaboration my whole life, and what I've learned is um, you may move, and Peter Dreckler says this, it's a quote of his, that you'll move faster by yourself, but you'll go farther with others. And I always found through collaboration the strength and diversity, the strength of uniqueness, and where we can all play our parts to get to whatever vision or goal or outcome or whatever we're trying to get to, whether that be in a relationship, whether that be in business, whether that be in our personal lives, however you want to look at it. We're always stronger when we work with other people. That's why people hire coaches. That's why people hire personal trainers. That's why people hire therapists and things like that, because it's harder to deceive a larger group than it is just one individual. I mean, if you were to even think about, if there was a crime scene, you know, the cop doesn't just go ask one person and get their one perspective.
Right.
They go and they ask, everybody that could have had some kind of, perception of it, so they can get a bigger picture. And I think that's the beauty of unity in our community, is understanding that, yeah, we have our differences. Yeah, we're unique individuals, but it's when we surrender our ego, or our pride of ego, I would say, would be a better way to look at it,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, where we can actually humble ourselves enough to realize that we don't have it all figured out. And the more we can connect with others, the greater wisdom that we can gain, the more life. You think of some of these people that have spent their whole lives in a niche market, and they're experts in that niche, but you take them out of that niche and then they're completely lost. I and I think that's where unity kind of can come in, because in a photography world or something like that, you have a guy working the camera, you have someone doing editing, you have somebody doing all these different roles that to get the project done, and it gets done, you know with less effort from just one person, because everybody's sharing the load. And that's really where the principle of unity, or unity mindset, or unity consciousness, or anything kind of comes to me, and has helped me realize, that it's not just about me. It's not just about my thoughts. It's not just about my feelings. It's not just about my life. But how do I serve beyond that, for myself and the benefits of other people? So,
Absolutely.
Long
Yeah,
list.
I mean, oh my God, that whole topic could just go on and on and on. I mean, there's so many things that we're going to be discussing in that, for all of you here. I mean, we're going to be discussing the external of all of that. How does that affect our lifestyle, our relationships, our interactions, our work, and how does that impact and affect and come from our internal workings? If our external workings are a reflection of our internal selves, then where is that line between individual and community internally, which is a lot of the things that I work on,
Mhm.
mindset, intuition, like what it is our responsibility as individuals to be a part of that community. And I think that's one of the challenges of being here in this physical world is we have to now all work together with a cognitive mind, which is basically synonymous with ego. So where do we in our own identity with thought, where do we fit into that community? And that essentially becomes the challenge for each and every one of us. That essentially is why we want to have a certain status. We want to be with a certain type of person. We want to make a certain type of money. We want to have this and that title or label. And I know you mentioned surrender. There's so much surrender that comes with personal growth and success of a community,
Mhm.
and I really believe that's one of our challenges as human beings. And it's also one of the things we're here to learn,
Mhm.
to overcome, because if you just think about the simple interaction of a conversation, what's usually going on when you're talking with someone? Are they really listening, or are they do believe they're listening? I mean, I honestly do believe people believe they're listening, but I believe there's such a small percentage of people that actually know how to listen. Because to most people, listening means thinking about, they're judging every word you say. We might not want to People might say, I'm not judging. Even just analyzing it and
Right.
evaluating it. The 95, I'm going to say this a million times on this podcast, the 95% of your mind that creates your reality, you are unaware of. So when you're listening to someone, your subconscious mind is processing and analyzing everything they say, and you are judging it. And
Mhm.
then, you're so busy thinking about how you're going to respond, what they think about how you respond, that we're not really having these authentic interactions. And so, if you take that beyond two people into a community, wow, we have a big challenge here,
Mhm.
because we have to really surrender enough to listen. And that means not thinking while someone else is talking
Right.
and actually allowing what they're saying to set in. Um, and I think that's really where it starts, because community starts with each one of us.
Mhm.
So, I think this podcast is an opportunity, Chris, for you to really share and expound on what I see is a vision for the evolution of community.
Right.
From my interactions with you, it's more of a vision of you know, where community is going and the potential that community has versus where it is now and how it's been used.
Right. Right.
Because we can talk about how community is being used and misused, and we can also talk about the potential that it has for us.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think that's a very good valid point. I was talking to someone today, and we were talking about he's from another country, and so I was trying to understand what's going on in his life, because he's in a situation where he's living in a place and the guy's taking advantage of his legal status, and he doesn't have a social security card yet. So he has a student visa, but he doesn't have, so he can't go get just any apartment or anything.
Right.
And he went to pay his rent today, and the guy raised his rent. He's like, if you don't like it, get out. And he was so heartbroken over that, and he was so upset and angry, and he was talking to me about this, and he was like, fearful of sharing some of the things, right? Because he doesn't want to get in trouble, and that kind of thing, and I stopped and I just kind of thought, and was like, well, we're all humans on this one planet.
Mhm.
the invisible lines that divide us may be beneficial in certain aspects, but to say that this person doesn't have any rights because of the current situation almost makes him like a lesser of a human being, which doesn't sit right with me. You know, because, you know, he has nothing to be able to stand up for on the legal way. So if we were going to look at unity here and say, well, how can we as a collective humanity heal the problems in between countries? How do we heal the challenges between religions? How do we heal the divide between co-workers and relationships and families and, you know, all that kind of stuff? And it really comes to, you know, understanding that we're all in the same place of presence. And how you perceive something, how I perceive something is going to be unique to our individual. However, that doesn't mean it's any more or less valuable than the person that's sitting next to you.
Exactly.
You know, I know we get into a lot of conversations about family, you know, and there's this like divide, right? Like, oh, if they're toxic, if they don't treat you right, if you don't, you know, if you don't like the way they're treating, just bail on them. And, you know, it's like, that's a choice.
Right.
You know, it's been my experience in growing up, having a traumatic, abusive childhood and all that kind of stuff. Believe it or not, I'm living next to my parents and we have a better relationship now than we ever had because I didn't run away. I stood up for myself. I said what I had to say. I respect them for who they are as individuals. And do we always see things eye to eye? Absolutely not. But at the same time, our relationship has gotten better because of that. We've grown through those growing pains of me coming from, you know, them being authoritarians to now all of a sudden, you know, they don't have much authority over me anymore and on my own free being. And actually learning to teach them how to see me in the lights that I want to be seen.
Yes.
Because of communication.
Absolutely.
You know, saying, hey, when you say this, it makes me feel shameful. It makes me feel, you know, that. And I'd appreciate it if you maybe not say that about the way, you know, this is going or that's going, because it's not helpful. You know, I already carry that myself. So you don't have to add on, because we all know what's right and wrong already. Like a 5-year-old knows what's right and wrong. They already, you know, it's like naturally instilled in us, right? Like, and being able to stand in your own power as an individual and take up your space does not necessarily mean diminishing someone else's space or someone else's perspective.
Absolutely. I think that, oh, go ahead.
But that, I mean, to me, that's equality. Or you know, and you know, I grew up, you know, very wanting. I mean, I was, as a teenager, I was in a group called the Sharps, which was Skinheads Against Racism and Prejudice, and we fought for equality. And you know, what I learned was we're equal in a lot of ways. But then the way that we've divided ourselves to give this special group or this special interest or this that, or, you know, whatever, like that actually helps divide us in certain ways. Because if people feel like, well, one group's getting, you know, these tax incentives for, you know, and this group isn't, then, you know, how is that equal? Well, it's equal if they choose to do the work to get to that point. You know, it's like the difference between an LLC and a nonprofit. There's just different protocols to get to those different levels, so you can get to the different outcomes that we choose to live by.
Absolutely.
And the more we have, I mean, I love the Great Awakening, right? Because everybody's waking up, everybody's learning new things, and learning, you know, what most people didn't know thanks to the internet, right? The internet has opened up so much more information about how to find these loopholes that at one time were, we'll call them loopholes, right?
Right.
Because they're buried, and you needed to have somebody that knew about them, and it usually required having, you know, a little more of this, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's all taken care of, it's all squared away, because they knew how to circumvent the system that was created to actually create the vision. Because if there wasn't the vision, well, then there wouldn't be motivation for everybody to get up and do what they do every day.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, you know, we have a couple different topics that as we move on, you know, we will get into more deeply, but
Mm-hmm.
content versus context, for example, you know, the context that you choose to live your life, that you get to choose, is, you know, we get so caught up in the content, what happened, who said this, who did this or that. But
Mm-hmm.
we also have to look at our individual and collective context. We live within the framework of the context that we've created as a society, and we also have that which we live in our own lives. So when we can change the context, and we'll get into that more in other episodes, but when we can change the context in our own lives and change the standards, that has to happen individually before it can happen collectively.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at what's happened collectively, you go back to the problem. You know, I have people say to me all the time, well, what can I do about that then? I'm just one person. Well, we all and each need to do that. You know, we need to be, you know, we will influence and be an example for who knows how many people. You never know how many people you really influence. You don't have to be on a social media to be influencing the people around you. And people will, you know, behavior is contagious, mindset is contagious, habits, beliefs, all of these things are contagious, whether they're positive or negative. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
rub off on people.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I want to throw out there in regards to what you're saying is, you know, we have to look at how we are being influenced and we're going to go over this a lot, my friends, in this conversation that Chris and I have every week. A lot of really controversial type of topics, you know, such as where are we getting influenced? Why are we making the choices we do? Why the things that we think are norms, where are they really coming from? You know, we're holding ourselves to a certain standard or expectation. And where is that really coming from? Is it really serving us to say, well, if I make $1 million this year, it's so that I can take a vacation every month and I can buy this type of car. And that's under the pretense that it is serving you, that you are now a success, that you've made it. But are you really? Is it really serving you? You know, then you have individuals like myself who are like, yeah, you know, I will take that money and how can I serve with it?
Mm-hmm.
How can I, you know, contribute? And then there's a different level and dimension of fulfillment that goes on within.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are individually feeling fulfilled, guess what? There's not space and room for all of the other things, for, you know, wrecking your life per se.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we've got to understand there are layers and layers and layers of things that are programming our subconscious mind to live the way that we are. You know, I mean, even just let's just take football. I mean, I was always into the arts, which is like, I mean, even you know, they consider dance an art. I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you, ballet is as much of a sport as anything else. Every bit as difficult. Martial arts, you know, those things I'm all interested in. Not so much into anything mainstream. I think if football wasn't mainstream, I'd probably be into it, but it's mainstream, so I'm not into it. But we have to look at what's really behind. If you ask a football fan, I'm not ditching football guys, but if you ask a football fan, why are you a football fan? Well, the real feeling is community and unity,
Mm-hmm.
right? They want to feel a sense of community.
Right.
And that's a good thing. But then if you take who is abusing that need for community, who's really making the money off the football, and I don't mean the players, then we have a whole different perspective, don't we?
Right.
And a whole different, what role am I playing in being a football fan?
Right.
Right. If you go over to the UK and you go to a rugby game or a soccer game, which they call football, oh, you feel the unity. Those
Right.
games I loved. Completely different type of atmosphere. But they're still really at the phase where they're just really in it for community. It's starting to get more economic based, but over here in the US, those types of sports make billions of dollars.
Sure.
So there's a reason why people are programmed to be so obsessed with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a programming. So one of the things I'd like to invite the listeners to think about is when you look at yourself in your own life, what things are really the things that you would be loving and supporting and having as part of your community? And maybe it's some of the same things that you enjoy now. But under what pretense are you including those things in your life? Because a lot of what we think we have to have or do or be is simply putting money in somebody else's pocket. Right. So these are all sorts of things to consider because you're going to be happiest, most abundant, most fulfilled, most joyful, doing what's in alignment with the real you, the authentic self. And that's one of the things I know we want to really get to the bottom of in this podcast is, if you're wanting to manifest your life, you've got to make sure it's from that authentic place.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it never fills that void. I mean, and going and just kind of piggybacking on, what we were just talking about. I mean, I believe the NFL is still a nonprofit organization, so they're not even contributing to the systems that actually pay for their stadiums. And, so, I mean, it's all kinds of weird. And, I have so many friends, I mean, I'm no longer, I don't watch a whole lot of that stuff. It just clouds my mind, and it doesn't change my life in any way. But I do know people that, if their team loses their next couple days, they're just a mess, and they're just stuck, on something that they had absolutely no control, and, I've lost friends over them saying, well, we won today. And I'm like, really? You're on the payroll? That's awesome. Like, like I know that's taken it to a little bit of extreme, but it's that sense of identity of, oh, we belong to something. We belong to something. We belong to something. And do you? Do they even care that you're there? Are you making a difference? And I think that's, I mean, for me, that's what really helped me hone things down, because I was in my early 20s and in my teens chasing, what everyone called the American dream. And I got to a level of financial well-being. I wouldn't call it abundance because I was broke inside. I was doing drugs and doing everything I can to try to create some gratification for the things that I was doing. But at the same time, I felt more abundant and free and more fulfilled, as you were speaking on, living by donation and being of service. And, I got to make money today. Okay, well, how do I serve somebody today? Can I do it as a handyman? Can I do it as a photographer? Can I do it as an energy healer, counselor, whatever role that I would have to play because I had developed these certain skill sets. I could be of service beyond myself. And the way they could serve me is by helping me with a financial contribution. So we both create a win-win. And I think that's getting back to unity. I mean, yeah, unity is oneness, unity of mind, unity of heart, unity of spirit, that's alignment. And when we're in that aligned place, you know, and then we have people from the outside that are aligned in that a similar vision. Man, does that feel marvelous. I mean, to do some of the ceremonies and things that we've been able to do over our lifetime, to be able to be a part of some of the things that we've gotten to do, like one person leaves from that, it changes the whole thing. Like, how powerful is that? You know, like, how beautiful is that we have such a natural occurring essence or presence that shapes the environment that we're in. I mean, and you know, we always talk about, you know, again, unity. You know, there is no past, there is no future. Those are thoughts. So we're always unified in the now.
Right.
So if we're separating ourselves by our thoughts, there's always an opportunity to collaborate in the now and say, okay, well, we misstepped, we made a mistake, we misspoke, we misunderstood, however we want to define it.
Yes.
But how do we get back to where it was that we wanted to be? You know, we wanted to be in this relationship. We wanted to be in this business. We wanted to be doing this exercise or this experience or whatever it is. And we're pulling ourselves out because we're out of alignment, because we're in two different states of mind. So how do we get back to that center of now? Like, we're here now. How do we do that? You know, and I think some of the greatest teachings of Zen and, you know, I mean, Buddhism and, you know, we could go on and on and on about the different teachings, but how do we stay in unity where we're not chasing pleasure and we're not running away from pain?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is the epitome of the mind, because every decision we make is either moving towards pleasure or away from pain. So, you know, one of the things to consider there is that, you know, and this is, at least this is the way I share it with my clients, how I've broken it down for myself, is to try to make it as simple as possible. You know, you have, if we're talking about unity consciousness, we are unity outside of space and time. If we go back and look at what Eckhart Tolle teaches and all the great teachers throughout history who were really trying to teach presence. Well, presence is actually the now. The now has nothing to do with time. It is, and it is what you are. But there's one factor that gets in the way there. The thinking mind, the prefrontal cortex. So this is why plants and animals are always present. Plants and animals are always conscious. Plants and animals are always in the now. Non-human animals. Humans are not. And this is a gift as well, really, because you know, obstacles are opportunities, and our mind is our opportunity and our obstacle. So, you know, this is why in all the teachings, like you were discussing, Chris, you know, Zen Buddhism and all that, it goes back to self-control and self-awareness. And really that is to get us to a point where you can differentiate between what is your ego mind. They call it your monkey mind. We're calling it your ego mind, even though, because mind and ego are the same. And what is it that is your eternal consciousness, that observer behind the thoughts? And really, all of us are on this journey to wake up and recognize we are the observer behind our thoughts, at which point we can use our mind as a tool. And to have a truly cohesive, functional, peaceful community, people need to at least be working towards that, which we actually all are, whether we want to be or not.
Right.
But be more conscious of it. I mean, because think about it. You can come together and have a great cohesive community for 2 or 3 meetings, right? And once everybody starts to get comfortable and that, you know, that comfort zones are crossed, all of a sudden everybody gets too comfortable, right? Their egos stop popping in and you've got different issues.
The honeymoon effect.
But if we can all do it individually, which is what they do in the Buddhist temples, they work on living it the way of life. So each person has to work individually and then bring to the community what they can contribute, and then go back and reflect. Go back and be still, be silent, be in the now alone. And I think that balance is really important, because instead of wanting to know what's our role in the community, if we remember who we are and we align with that, like, we're pulled towards what is most fulfilling to us, we automatically fit into the community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something really that like the Native Americans had, that our
Mm-hmm.
society has really veered away from a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important, to differentiate fear and danger, talking about the presence of now, right?
Yeah.
The fear is outside of the present moment.
Absolutely.
I talk to my clients, I like to tell this story to my clients is uh, when I'm standing on the ground looking at a roof, thinking about standing on the roof, I could think about falling down, but that's fear. But if I'm actually standing on the roof and then have that awareness, like, hey, I could fall from here, that's being aware of the possible danger. Um,
Exactly.
and there's two different, and we're going to have to behave in a certain way, to keep ourselves safe. And discern
Absolutely.
discern that. And yeah, and I also think, not having too many titles or being aware of, what you can contribute.
Mhm.
We can all walk down the roads, in the city or anywhere and see trash, but how many people pick it up? Well, that's not
Right.
mine.
Right, right.
But it's your planet. Like why can't you pick that up and take it to where it needs to go so it's not gonna, stay there, because it's a personal responsibility. Now, if someone chooses
Yeah.
not to and that's their thing, okay, well then that's where you're at, and that's fine. I'm going to pick up the trash because that helps me feel better.
Right. Right.
When I go kayaking and things like that, and people stop me because I'm picking up trash, and they
Right.
say really nice things, and I'm like, thank you for your compliment, but here's your example. Like I'm no different than you, dude. Like you can do this too.
It's nothing special. Right. Right.
But hey, the fact that they're even aware enough that I'm doing that and stopping and giving me a compliment, is doing a part. Because
Right. Right.
if people would just be like, you're an idiot, what are you doing? You're
Put that
ruining
back.
you're ruining the canoe trip. You keep stopping for trash, you're ruining
Yeah.
it. Then maybe it might be a little harder to do.
Right.
But I that came from my own personal intuition or my own personal truth of when I'm going down the river and I see trash, it hurts my heart.
Yeah.
And it would make me angry at the people that are just using our natural resources
Right.
and destroying it because they want to have a good time and they don't want to carry their beer bottles or whatever
Right.
it is. That used to really bother me, and I would get done at the end of the kayak trip and I'd be like, man, that was great, but God, all that darn trash.
Right. Yeah.
And so then I had to go, okay, well, what can I do about that? Okay, I'm gonna bring a trash bag. I'm gonna fill up a trash bag every time I go. If I miss some trash, then I miss some trash, no big deal, because I'm doing my part, and I gotta leave some trash for some other people to have the same opportunity.
Absolutely. Opportunity. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's doing those little things, and I know I grew up in the 90s, and leadership was really pressed on me, to be a natural leader, and it's like, well, you have to live by your own leadership.
Mhm.
You don't lead other people by telling them what to do. That's a manager.
Right.
You lead by example, and then those who choose to follow you, well, then you can call, then they can call you a leader, because only that is true.
Well, and they have to want to do it. I mean, you can make somebody do something, but until they're choosing to really do it themselves, until they feel the purpose, they feel the motivation, they feel the drive,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't, it's not the same thing. I mean, I've really taken such a different approach with my clients. I've slowed way down over the years with the process that they go through because everyone wants immediate gratification. And it's like you can tell, like I can tell my clients, whether it's a reading or it's a coaching session, I can tell them, yeah, this is what you need to do. But to be honest, it makes zero difference whether they go off and they do it that day or whether they don't listen and they come back months later and they go, oh, I think I need to do this. You were telling me to do that months ago and I didn't. It really doesn't matter until they come up with a decision. It won't have the impact that it's going to need to make a difference for them and in their life. It simply doesn't. And so, I think one of the things, I know you do this as well, is, being the role of example and facilitator, pulling away from telling people what to do because we really are on our own journey, you know, and we will make the choices we need to when we reach that point where we're like, okay, and it's usually because of pain, right? We talk about all decisions being you moving towards pleasure away from pain. And the truth is that for most of us, unless we really start to see the significance of getting out of a comfort zone or making the cognitive decision, I've had enough. For most people, they wait until they hit rock bottom,
Mhm.
until the pain of getting out of the comfort zone, the pain and fear of getting out of the comfort zone is less than what they are suffering. I'll say that again for all of our listeners, because this is so vital. If you are in a place where you feel stuck, you're never stuck, but and you're afraid of that thing that you've been putting off, avoiding, that you're afraid to do, that's your comfort zone.
Mhm.
And so, if you're not doing that, you probably need to suffer more than the fear and pain of the change of getting out of the comfort zone before you'll leave that zone. And I think that that's really important because what does that lead us back to? What you were talking about before when, we've got people don't want to be uncomfortable and they don't want to be afraid.
Mhm.
But as human beings, this serves us. And unfortunately, some of the controversial things that we're going to be talking about in this program, where it's so easy for us to be marketed to and sold to and convinced and brainwashed of things, all of those things have to do with either instilling fear or constantly feeding us dopamine fixes or things that are going to make us feel good. And the truth is that sometimes you just have to walk through the fire to get where you want to go
Mhm.
because it's there for you for a reason. And some ancient cultures were so good at, before we had such a consumer's lifestyle, it was so much easier. Like my grandfather, my great grandfathers, it was like teach people how to get through the tough times, how to
Mhm.
make the best of it, how to be the best version of yourself, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, versus how to avoid the pain and immediately feel good again. We don't have to, and Chris, you were just mentioning this the other day. We don't have to always feel good. And we have that 95% of our mind we're not aware of. We have this constant programming that, whether you guys are aware of it or not, is telling us. I mean, if you're watching social media or TV or listening to the radio, you are brainwashed with this in that
Mhm.
95% of your mind you're not aware of. That if you don't feel good, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your life. There's something you have to fix. And that's just not true. That's not real life.
Or even worse, there's something wrong with your environment or your
Right.
relationships, you know?
Or who can you blame? Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus radical responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. Because that would bring us back to the pain thing, right? Like, oh, it's always, it's always
Absolutely.
me. It's
Absolutely.
always me. It's always my responsibility to take accountability for my part. Because if I don't, then I can't fix it.
Right, right. And versus the blame game,
Right. Yep.
where nowadays it's sort of a thing to find somebody else to blame.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that goes back to, we were talking a little bit about the difference of leaders and managers.
Mhm.
And the leader is going to take responsibility for who they're leading.
Right.
oh well, maybe I didn't show them the right way, or I didn't talk, I didn't explain it, or I didn't whatever. But a manager, and I say this with all the love in my heart, because I learned this from my dad.
Yeah.
Managers tend to, because he was a manager my whole life, and he managed our family like a business. And you take credit for the good things, and you deny the bad things.
Right.
And it's like,
Yep.
well,
Yep.
like, okay, that's why I was the black sheep of the family. It's like, because I was
Yep.
challenging those status quos, and that led me. I mean, I remember having a conversation, and I'm bawling, because he finally came out and he said, you showed all the signs as a child that you should have gotten therapy. You should have got help. You were cutting yourself. You were suicidal. You were depressed. You were, speaking out. You were acting out. You were doing all those things. Like, we should have seen the cues, right?
Right.
And done our thing. And that's why I appreciate that you see that now. However, I wouldn't be where I am today, who I am today, doing what I'm doing today, had I not had to do it on my own.
Mhm.
So thank you for that blessing. You
Right.
don't have to regret not being there for me like I wanted you to be back then, because you were so busy doing what you were doing, what you believed was best for our family, and working those 60, 70, 80, 90-hour weeks,
Right.
sleep deprived and angry and frustrated, and felt like you didn't have control of your life. I've been there. It sucks.
Mhm.
And so I can empathize with that.
I'm there now with the horses.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you.
yeah. You're an earth angel taking care of all those
God.
animals, man. I tell you what, because I have a threshold,
I
um,
don't, and that's a problem. But yeah, that's a whole nother story.
I can tend to be a little more selfish with my time. I'm like, I'd rather just sit here. I don't
Give
want to
me
do
some. Give me some.
yeah, I just want to hang out and just enjoy my day and watch the sun move and whatever.
Yes.
But
Yes. And
uh,
and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's another thing that we're going to, be getting into, guys. This is another aspect of, are you, I mean, like for me, this is me being compelled because of my love for animals and wanting to care for them amongst everything else I'm doing. But, that could lead us into a conversation of, are you okay just being? We're in a society that's, you constantly have to do.
mhm,
And when are you taking that time to be, to find that balance? Because that balance of the being is the part of you that's connecting to the non-thinking self, the conscious self. And we have all these people trying to do studies to find out what is consciousness and all this. That'll be another conversation, but, the truth is they're not going to find it. I mean, I'm a science person,
right,
but they're not going to find it. It's not here. They're using science for the material world, which works for the material world. We need it here,
hmm
but they're not going to find it in the sciences that we have here and now. They might come close in quantum physics, but consciousness is a whole different thing. You can know it and you are it. But if
right,
you are when you're standing in the sunlight, you don't necessarily see the sun.
right,
So you are consciousness. So are you going to be able to see the consciousness? If consciousness is God, no matter what you believe in, same thing. You're not going to see it. Unless you have a mirror, you don't even see yourself here as a
right,
physical human. But when you look in the mirror, are you actually seeing who you really are? No, because
right,
you're 99.9% space.
right.
You can see through yourself, and in the mirror, you're backwards. So, you know, things are not what they appear, right?
Well, I think that's a difference, and that's a great example of the experiential nature of life versus the knowledge and wisdom of it.
Mhm.
We can study and we can improve this you know our egoic self, our identity, or however we want to label it, um to be very knowing of different things outside of ourselves,
Mhm.
you know, from somebody else's interpretation. But until we experience it, do we actually know it? And then by actually going through an experience, we actually have the wisdom of it, versus, you know, just the knowing. And
Absolutely.
I know going through some Native American ceremonies and things like that, like you have such a profound experience, you know, going through this thing. You come out and you're totally changed. Like your energy's like, oh my God, this feels so good. And you try to explain what you went through with somebody to somebody, and they're just like, that sounds weird. You know, like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, oh man, you know, but the words that we use, our
Mhm.
communication, our knowing, it will never match up to the fullness of what you're talking about, of the experience itself.
Right. Right.
And it's always shifting, it's always changing, because it's always in the presence of now.
Yeah, the knowing versus the thinking or the believing is
Hmm.
so important. And that's definitely something that, we're going to be talking about here. Um, not, getting the experience, but also what do you know? Being able to identify what do you actually know that is a knowing that comes from your consciousness versus thinking or believing. Beliefs are just repeated thoughts. So that you can differentiate between um, your belief system, your mindset that's creating your life, and your actual true self. And that's where we're going to get into authenticity.
Right.
Because I know we're going to be, talking a lot about authenticity on here and how that can empower you. So,
Well, I think that's the only way you can truly be yourself, right? Like,
absolutely.
if you're just doing it because someone else did it, then you're just trying to be like them, and you're really not being you. Um,
No,
and
no.
there's no unity in that. Um, in the big scheme of things,
Well,
because
yeah,
in my belief, I mean, if you're just going along with what the narrative is, I mean, I guess there's a sense of unity because there's a sense of belonging, and that would be, you could have fear of not belonging, and that's why you don't speak up if you feel like something's not right.
but that's all ego.
But that's all ego. So again, you know, you're only separating yourself because you believe you're separate.
Absolutely.
So I mean, the title of the show is, well, we're already doing it. So we've
Right,
already got it
right.
figured out. You know, if we can do it with more love and more peace and more understanding, more compassion, more empathy, you know, we'll be a better society as a whole.
Right.
Um, um, because we're not going to be fighting each other for things, uh, you know, fighting each other for things that we think are different, because we realize that they're just another shade of the truth.
Absolutely. Well said.
Thanks.
Well said. And as we become more conscious and we wake up, we automatically are being, I think the whole point of being here is to be that eternal conscious being that we are in physical form, and to be as
Mhm.
close to that, to wake up in physical form as that being. And wow, what a journey that is.
Right.
Because when we do that, then we are naturally in community the way
Right.
we are before we come here and the
Right.
way we will be when we go back.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be able to walk into any room and being like, I'll be able to relate to everybody in some way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, that takes a lot of fear and imposter syndrome and, you know, all these things that people are trying to
Oh,
market.
totally. And if you know yourself, if you're aware of yourself, all of that goes away.
Right.
All of that goes away because all that matters is knowing how you're going to respond, knowing who you are, knowing you're
Excuse
being
me.
authentic. And then it doesn't matter what anyone's opinions are or how they respond or react to you, then none of that matters. And that's such tremendous freedom that I think all of you would like to have. We'd all like that.
I'd like that. I'd love to not
We
to
all want
react.
to feel that way,
Yeah,
right?
you know, I'm working on not reacting. It's been a
Well,
lifelong
yeah,
thing.
non-reaction. I mean, we could definitely talk about like the Stoics on here. There's a reason for the non-reaction. I'm working on that with my clients right now, and it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But getting to know yourself enough, being authentic enough that it doesn't matter what's going on around you or what other people are saying or doing or thinking. That's freedom.
Right.
And that's what the great teachers that have awakened get to experience. So, I know in future shows, because I know it's 3:00, but we'll also talk about that freedom and talk about how presence can get you there. Because can you imagine having a whole community where maybe not everybody's fully awake, but they remember who they are and they're conscious and they are taking radical responsibility and they are not just thinking about what can I get out of it, screw them, they're not doing what I like.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have to accept other people's crap either. They're just standing in their own power, taking responsibility for themselves, and that allows us to hold space for one another.
Yep.
And those aren't just words, that's really important stuff.
Oh man, one of the most powerful things that I can attest to in my life, as far as not reacting, is thanking somebody for their opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might do that in different ways than I do, but yeah. Yeah.
I mean, gratitude is a key to,
Absolutely.
a lot of our problems, but if we can thank someone for being brave enough to tell us what they think about us, hey, that's a gift. We might not like what they have to say. There may be some truth in that. There may not be truth in that, but we can't discern that with our mind, right? Or in our heart, if we're not aware. And then we're left guessing. And that's, I think, where the ego and the monkey mind comes in. Do they like me? Do they not like me? Oh, they said that, like.
Versus it doesn't matter.
Right. Like, like how do I stand? Am I safe? Am I secure? And then when you realize, yeah, absolutely. When you're in your authenticity, it's like, you know what? I'm walking with these people. And as long as we continue to walk with these people, it's all good. And if something happens to where, we don't walk together anymore because of a disagreement or whatever, well, then that's time for us we're still in unity. We're still in consciousness together, but we're not in the 3D playing field together. Like when I quit drinking and doing hard drugs and, doing all that, like I don't associate with a lot of people that do that anymore because that's not my thing. If they want to do it, go for it. It's your life and you have your freedoms to do that. But I choose not. And I choose not to put myself in a lot of those environments, especially like at sports things and whatever, because I want peace. That's what I'm looking for. And I find that a lot of people that are on substances aren't always so peaceful. So,
well, yeah. And the irony is that's a step more asleep. And often, I mean, that's what we all seek, right? From the time we're born, we're all seeking to go back to that unity. That's what we all want. That's what we're all seeking.
Right.
And so when people do certain substances, it makes them physically sense and feel as though they're more awake, they're more aware, they're more at peace, they're less self-conscious, but in truth, they're more asleep.
Right.
It's taking you the opposite direction, right? And so it's taking those obstacles and turning them into opportunities and finding a way to be grateful for everything, even the hardships that come your way. I think I want to sort of leave everybody with this thought. Things are always working out for you. If you can have a mindset and a conscious knowing, and this might take a while to sort of shift your perspective and actually believe it, really feel and believe it. But, I think from my work, talking with and communicating with spirit all the time, running on my intuition all the time, this becomes so clear to me repetitively every day. And you may have to start out by looking for this in your life first. You might have to really look for it, and then it'll be more obvious. But things are always working out for the better. Always. but you have free will. So your free will might take you a long, winding, painful course, but even that is you choosing what you're needing to learn,
Mhm.
right? So even if you make a bad choice, mistakes are not bad. You're here to make mistakes. Please make as many as possible because without them, you don't learn.
Right.
That's what you're here to do. But in the end, it's all okay. In the end, everything is always working out for you and it's always in your best interest. And you just have to keep in mind, you may not see it. It may not feel or seem that way, but there's always a light at the end of that tunnel. But we're such little, such little pieces of the big community of everything that you can't see. You don't have that bird's eye view here as a human being,
Right.
or you wouldn't be able to have the human experience, and I think that's just really important to keep in mind when we go through things. Just take radical responsibility, make the best choice you can, remain present, and know that everything's working out for you. And that's comforting.
Well, that's a great way to end the show.
I think
Thank you.
so. Great discussion, Chris.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you again for everything.
Thank you. I think I want to let the audience know where they can find us here. So if
Okay.
you guys want to, we posted the new YouTube page, brand new. If you guys want to like and join that, there's going to be all sorts of great things coming there. You can always watch the broadcast through there. We're trying to get it set up through the My Powerful Choices Awareness Network, which I will share this too. We weren't able to log it on from there today. And then obviously yours is a page. Is that right, Chris? You're Enhancing the World.
So we have the Enhance Your World show page
right.
on Facebook.
Okay, so that would be the other place then, if you guys want YouTube or Facebook, but please go over and like our YouTube page so we can grow that as well.
And we're setting up Patreon too. So
yes.
It'll be there. Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of new great things coming in the next few weeks. And, we'll have some live events. I know that there is going to be a lot of people on here probably are into the wanting to learn more about healing and prayer and that sort of thing, whether it be mental, emotional, physical. We are going to do like a once a month weekend healing circle where you guys can get on and ask questions, and we'll, give you some different techniques or, things like special ways to pray or different healing techniques. And you guys can come with your questions and make it interactive.
Yeah.
So do you have anything about that, Chris, you want to share before we pop off?
I mean, I'm really excited to be of service, in any way that we can. And, that's, I love sharing stories. So this is awesome.
Yes. Yes.
But, actually working with folks and helping them move through the obstacles and the opportunities for their expansion and their growth. That's where my heart sings. Because at the end of the day, we can lay our heads down on the pillow and say, I made a difference today.
Right.
And again, that's still ego, but
Right.
But it feels way better than, man, look how much I made, like I sold all these programs and, like I'm, and start elevating myself up to this place. And I've done that, and one of the, I guess my parting words is, be humble, because if you believe you're more than what you are, the universe will put you in a place to remind you. Yes. And it's way more painful,
yes.
To go through that than to be egoless.
Being humble is not a fun experience.
Yeah, no.
Remain humble yourself so the universe doesn't have to humble you is good advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So. And that reminds me of the, all the great teachers always go back to talking about, and even Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you guys listen to his work with neuroscience and quantum physics, he talks about we're in the quantum world 7.8 times a second. But in order to manifest authentically from the quantum world, amongst a bunch of other things, this is what I've been working with my clients on, but is you must become no one, nothing, no one in no time. Become nothing, no one in no time. And in a world that encourages us to be everything and everyone to everyone and get everything you can, it's exactly the opposite of what the world says. But it's also the very thing that brings you everything you think you're wanting. So, oh, the irony.
Right?
Oh, the irony.
Oh, the
Yes.
irony.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for all the people who tuned in live. And thank you to all those who will watch this after that.
Yes.
And those who will help us continue on this mission as we walk through the presence of now.
And send your questions, guys. If you have
Oh.
questions, topics, or things you want to talk about, please post them in the comments. We will get them and we will turn them into fabulous conversations for and with you. And we'll see you next week here at 2 p.m. again.
Perfect.
Next Tuesday.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Larkin. Bye-bye.
Bye.